In 1492, inside the Alhambra's Hall of the Ambassadors, Queen Isabella signed a contract. Her treasurer reportedly pleaded against it. Every scholar called it madness. She ignored them all. Her gaze fixed on Christopher Columbus, a Genoese sailor promising a westward passage to the Indies. The black ink glittered, still wet. This single decision redrew the world. It unleashed conquest, disease, and death across 2 continents. How did one woman, against all counsel, make one of the most consequential gambles in human history? What hidden truth about power does her audacity reveal about the choices you make in your own life? To understand what happens next, you need to picture late 15th century Spain. Not the peaceful country you know, but a kingdom forged in centuries of brutal warfare. Isabella of Castile was no figurehead. She was a hardened political operator who had fought a civil war to secure her own throne. Her marriage to Ferdinand II of Aragon was a strategic alliance that united the 2 largest Christian kingdoms in Iberia, creating the foundation of modern Spain. For 10 years, their singular focus had been the Reconquista, the final campaign to drive the last Muslim rulers from the peninsula. In January of 1492, they succeeded, capturing the Emirate of Granada. The victory bells you would have heard ringing in the streets of Seville and Toledo were also, in a sense, a funeral dirge for the kingdom's finances. The nation was victorious, but it was also, reportedly, bankrupt. The royal court was a place of deep Catholic piety mixed with relentless political scheming, where the memory of war was still fresh, like the metallic taste of blood in the air. This was the world Christopher Columbus entered, a world of exhausted glory, desperately in need of a new purpose and a new source of gold. Now, I want you to travel 8 centuries earlier and halfway across the world to 7th century China. Here you will find Isabella's mirror, another woman who would seize history and bend it to her will. You are in the Tang dynasty, a golden age of poetry, art, and imperial power. But the halls of the Forbidden City in Chang'an were, in some ways, a gilded cage, ruled by a rigid Confucian patriarchy that viewed women as possessions. Into this world walked Zetian. She began her life in the palace as a low-ranking concubine to Emperor Taizong. After his death, she should have been exiled to a Buddhist monastery for the rest of her days, as was the custom. But through ruthless intelligence and a talent for political survival that bordered on supernatural, she not only returned to the palace, but maneuvered her way into becoming the empress consort to the new emperor, Gaozong. From there, she became the power behind the throne, and then, after his death, she did the unthinkable. In the year 690, she declared her own dynasty, the Zhou, and took the title of Huangdi, Emperor, not Empress, but Emperor, the only woman in Chinese history to ever hold that absolute title. To do so, she had to defy an entire civilization's definition of order, family, and heaven itself. These 2 women, separated by an ocean and 800 years, shared no culture, no language, and no religion. But they shared one fundamental understanding, that to change the world, you cannot simply join the game. You must be willing to shatter the board and create a new one in its place. And the first step in shattering the board is always an act of profound defiance. But what Isabella did next, after the final battle of the Reconquista, was even more shocking than her initial gamble. And this is where the story stops making sense. For 7 years, Christopher Columbus was a persistent presence in Isabella's court. You can picture him there, a persistent, slightly mad figure in worn clothes, haunting the corridors of power while the Queen was busy directing a war. He had already been rejected by the King of Portugal, by the King of France, and reportedly by the King of England. He had even been rejected by Isabella's own commission of experts in 1490. Their verdict was unanimous and logical. The royal cosmographers, scholars from the prestigious University of Salamanca, argued correctly that Columbus had dangerously underestimated the circumference of the Earth. They warned the Queen that the ocean was far vaster than he claimed, and that his ships would run out of food and water long before reaching Asia. They were not wrong. If the Americas had not been in his way, he and his crew would have simply vanished into the sea. Every logical argument was against him. Ferdinand, Isabella's husband and co-ruler, was reportedly opposed, viewing it as a foolish waste of resources the kingdom did not have. The court treasurer, Fernando de Talavera, laid out the bleak financial reality day after day. The war had cost millions of maravedis. The soldiers needed to be paid. The kingdom needed to be rebuilt. There was simply no money for a suicidal fantasy voyage. But what Columbus was truly hiding from them was far more audacious than just a miscalculated map. If you had been a fly on the wall during these meetings, you would have witnessed a masterclass in obsession. Columbus did not relent. He lobbied not just the Queen, but her closest confidants. He befriended the keepers of the royal purse, men like the treasurer Luis de Santangel, speaking of the endless gold of the Grand Khan and the holy mission of converting the heathens of the East. He framed his quest not as a commercial venture, but as a crusade, a way to fund a final war to reclaim Jerusalem for Christendom, an argument perfectly tuned to Isabella's fervent piety. She met with him again and again, questioning him, praying on the matter in her private chapel, the scent of cold stone and incense filling the air around her. What she did not know yet was the real reason for his persistence. In early 1492, after the fall of Granada, she reportedly gave her final answer. No, it was over. A defeated Columbus packed his bags and began the journey to France to try his luck with yet another king. He was on the road, miles from the city, when a royal messenger caught up to him. The Queen had changed her mind. The treasurer, Luis de Santangel, had made one final, desperate plea on Columbus's behalf, arguing that the potential glory was worth the relatively small risk, even offering to help secure private funding. Something in his argument, or in her own private calculus, tipped the scales. She summoned Columbus back to court. The contract was drawn up. She did not just agree to fund him. She granted him his every exorbitant demand. She made him admiral of the ocean sea and viceroy and governor of all new lands he could claim for Castile. The decision was so stunning, so contrary to all evidence and advice, that it felt less like a political act and more like an act of faith or of madness. But the choice to sign the contract was not the most dangerous one she made. The truly devastating decision was what she chose to believe about the world that lay on the other side of the ocean. Now shift your focus back to China. Wu Zetian sits on the dragon throne, an act of cosmic rebellion. The tension in her court is not the quiet hum of debate. It is the silent, suffocating fear of the executioner's sword. Her enemies were not scholars with maps. They were the powerful, entrenched, aristocratic clans of the Northwest, families who had dominated Chinese politics for centuries and viewed her as a blasphemous usurper. They whispered in the shadows of the palace, their silk robes rustling with conspiracy. They saw her as a temporary stain on the mandate of heaven, one they could easily erase. You, as a witness, would have seen that they profoundly underestimated her. Wu Zetian knew that to survive, she could not just rule. She had to remake the very foundations of power. Her first move was to attack the source of the aristocracy's influence, their bloodline. But the true masterstroke was how she turned their own ambition against them. She massively expanded the imperial examination system, a civil service test based on literary and Confucian classics. Before her, the exams existed, but they were often a formality. The highest government posts often went to the sons of noble families. Wu Zetian changed the rules. She made the final stage of the exam a personal interview, conducted by herself. You can imagine the scene. a young scholar from a poor provincial family, his hands trembling, standing before the emperor herself, a woman who could grant him more power than his ancestors had ever dreamed of, or have his head removed with a single gesture. She personally promoted these new men, these talented commoners, to the highest levels of her government, placing them in positions previously held by her aristocratic enemies for generations. This wasn't just reform, it was a declaration of war. The old families watched in fury as their birthright was given away to peasants and scribes. But their fury was met with something far colder: Zetian's secret police. She established a reign of terror managed by cruel and efficient ministers. She created the copper box, a device with 4 slots placed in the capital, where any citizen could anonymously deposit accusations against anyone else, including high-ranking officials. It was a perfect instrument of paranoia. A careless word at a dinner party, a private complaint about the emperor, anything could lead to a midnight arrest, torture, and a quiet execution or forced suicide. The system was designed to turn everyone into an informant. The air in the capital grew heavy with suspicion. Friends fell silent, and families looked at each other with fear. But the true horror wasn't in the public purges. It was in the quiet, methodical way she used this fear, a pattern of betrayal that would become her signature. And the reason nobody stopped it is stranger than anything that came before. But there's a detail buried in the record that nobody flagged at the time. Let us return to that room in the Alhambra. The contract is signed, the Capitulaciones de Santa Fe. It is a document of immense faith. Isabella is not just betting her kingdom's money. She is betting its future on the vision of one man. This is the moment of ultimate betrayal, but not in the way you think. It is not Columbus betraying Isabella or her betraying her husband. It is Isabella betraying the collective reality of her time. She is betraying the maps. She is betraying the scholars. She is betraying the trusted advisors who have guided her through war and politics, the very men who helped her secure her crown. She is betraying the known world in favor of an imagined one. Think for a moment about the person whose judgment you trust most in the world. Your partner, your parent, your mentor. Now imagine a stranger walks into your life with an impossible story, and you find yourself choosing to believe them, to risk everything you have, your home, your savings, your reputation, on their word alone, while the person you trust most pleads with you to see reason. Can you feel the weight of that choice? The terrifying loneliness of it? In that quiet hall, surrounded by the ghosts of conquered kings, Isabella of Castile chose to be alone with her conviction. She lifted the quill, and with that single act of faith, she orphaned her kingdom from the certainty of the world it had always known. The silence that followed the signing was the sound of a paradigm shattering. What they found when they finally opened the door changed everything, and not in the way anyone expected. Here's where it gets worse. Now, let us turn back to the cold, calculated world of Zetian. The terror she unleashed was not chaotic. If you look closer, what you see is not random violence. It is a terrifyingly precise machine. This is the coordination reveal. The whispers of treason from the old aristocratic clans were not met with an army, but with a quiet, bureaucratic process of annihilation. The machine worked like this. First, an accusation would be deposited into the copper box, or extracted by a secret police interrogator in a cold, dark room. The target was always a member of a powerful rival clan, a general with an independent army, or a minister who still clung to the old ways. Second, the arrest would be swift and silent. Third, a confession would be produced, often through torture. Fourth, the sentence, execution or forced suicide, would be carried out immediately, along with the extermination of the official's entire family to prevent any future revenge. Finally, and most importantly, The newly vacant high-ranking position would be filled within days by one of the brilliant loyal scholars Zetian had hand-picked from her new examination system. It was a perfect, self-perpetuating cycle. Accusation, elimination, replacement. This was not a purge. It was a corporate restructuring of an empire, using terror as its primary tool. And here's what should make you deeply uncomfortable. This was not a system run by monsters, but by ambitious bureaucrats, by men who understood that the fastest way to get a promotion was to ensure your superior's sudden and permanent retirement. The entire government became a network of interlocking betrayal, where your loyalty to the emperor was demonstrated by your willingness to destroy your colleagues. It was a system that rewarded the most ruthless. But this meticulous machine of political control was hiding a much deeper, more personal secret about Zetian's own capacity for cruelty. A secret that lies buried in the tragic story of her own children. A secret that will reveal the true cost of her power. The secret you need to know about Zetian, the one that reveals the true cost of her power, is what she did to her son, Li Xian. He was the crown prince, her heir, a poet and a scholar. But as he grew into a man, he began to amass his own power base, and she came to see him not as her child, but as a rival. Accusations of treason, conveniently discovered, suddenly surfaced. Zetian had him stripped of his title, exiled, and placed under house arrest. A few years later, in 684, she sent one of her generals to his place of exile with an order to commit suicide. Her own son. And he was not the only one. She is suspected of murdering her infant daughter to frame a rival consort early in her career. She exiled and degraded her other sons, Li Dan and Li Jie, forcing one to change his surname from Li to Wu. She had her grandchildren and other relatives executed when they dared to speak against her powerful favorites. What you now understand, and what most people never will, is that this was not about simple paranoia. This was the systemic price of power. For a woman to hold the dragon throne, to wield the mandate of heaven in a world that believed a woman on the throne was an offense against nature itself, she had to prove she was more detached, more ruthless, and more willing to sacrifice for power than any man. The Confucian system was built on family loyalty as the bedrock of the state. To conquer that system, Zetian had to take its most sacred value and burn it to the ground. She had to prove that her only loyalty was to the throne, even if it meant destroying her own flesh and blood. She had to become a monster to break the system that tried to cage her. And this brings us back to Isabella. The systemic truth of her decision is just as dark, but coded in the language of piety. Her goal, she fervently believed, was to spread the Catholic faith. But the system she and Columbus inadvertently created was one of the most efficient machines of human exploitation ever conceived. When Columbus and the conquistadors who followed him discovered that the islands were not rich in gold, they needed a new commodity. That commodity became human beings. The Spanish crown instituted the encomienda system. It granted Spanish colonists a tract of land and dominion over the indigenous people living on it. In exchange for protecting them and instructing them in the Christian faith, the colonist could demand tribute and forced labor. You can see the terrible echo of Zetian's logic here, a system that uses a noble justification, civil service reform, religious conversion, to mask a brutal mechanism of control and extraction. The encomienda system was slavery in all but name, sanctioned by the crown and blessed by the church. It led to the deaths of millions through overwork, starvation, and disease. The real horror wasn't just the greed of the colonists. It was the creation of a moral and legal framework that defined mass death as a byproduct of salvation. What you now understand is that both women, in their quest to forge a new world, created systems that required human sacrifice. Zetian sacrificed her own family to the god of political stability. Isabella sacrificed millions of unknown people across an ocean to the gods of gold, glory, and one very specific version of God. The dread is not that they were evil. The dread is that they were architects, and the blueprints for their new worlds required a foundation of bones. So we return to the question that has been sitting with you this entire time. How did Isabella, a shrewd and calculating ruler, make such a reckless choice? And why, despite its horrific consequences, do you feel a sliver of admiration for it? The answer to the question you've been waiting for is this. She did it because she, like Zetian, understood that true power doesn't come from playing by the existing rules. It comes from having the courage to create new ones. Her world was hemmed in. The Ottoman Empire controlled the East. Her rivals in Portugal controlled the African sea routes. The old map was a prison, and Columbus offered her the key to an unknown door. She wasn't funding a voyage, she was funding an escape. She was placing a bet that the world was bigger, richer, and more open to her ambitions than any of her advisors believed. And the reason you admire her, the reason that disturbs you, is that you recognize that impulse. It's the whisper in the back of your own mind that tells you to take the risk, to quit the job, to defy the expectations of others, to bet on your own vision of the world against all evidence. You admire the sheer force of will required to look at a map that says, "Here be dragons," and decide to sail there anyway. You admire the courage, even as you now stand witness to the catastrophic, world-ending price that was paid for it by others. Look again at that scene in the Alhambra. The queen is holding the contract, the ink still wet. Before you saw it as a gamble. Now you see it for what it is, a weapon being signed into existence. A document that would function as both a birth certificate for the modern world and a death warrant for the old one. The pattern these women created, the visionary leader whose ambition outpaces morality, the grand project that promises progress but delivers subjugation, did not end in the 15th century. Every time you hear a tech mogul promise to remake society with a new algorithm, you should ask what old society is being deleted. Every time a politician offers a simple solution to a complex world, you should ask whose world is about to be simplified into non-existence. These women held the pen that redrew the map of the world. But power is not just a pen. It is a weapon, and you are living on the map they drew in blood. Tell me in the comments, which part of this stayed with you?